I've been sitting on a realization recently, one that has been quietly reshaping how I look at my life, my goals, and the way that I judge myself when things don't line up the way that I expect them to. For most of my life, I believed that there was one trait that determined whether I would succeed or fail, whether I would finish what I started, whether I would become someone that I would respect. That trait was discipline. Discipline was the thing I trusted more than anything else, the thing that I leaned on when things got hard, the thing that I told myself would carry me through if I just applied enough of it. And for a long time, it worked. Welcome to the Lead World channel, where we explore the inner world behind leadership, well-being, and the realities of building a life that doesn't break you. Discipline has been a part of my life as long as I can remember. Long before I had words for it, I was practicing it instinctively. I would periodically give something up for a fixed amount of time. 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 2 months, alcohol, sugar, carbs, late night screens, sometimes even social distractions. Not because I thought deprivation made me better, but because I wanted to know that those things did not own me, that I was choosing them, not being controlled by them, that if I decided to stop, I could. Over time, that practice became something deeper than discipline. It became trust, an internal trust, that quiet confidence that if I said I'd do something, I'd follow through with it. And once you have that trust in yourself, difficult goals stop feeling overwhelming. You stop negotiating with yourself and you stop relying on motivation. You become someone who does what they say they will do. For a long time, my life was simple enough to support that approach. I could focus on one thing at a time, and I could aim my discipline like a laser. I could organize my habits around a single outcome. And when you're only carrying one or two priorities, discipline feels clean, it feels sharp, and it feels effective. But life doesn't stay simple. As I've got older, my life's become layered, complicated, multifaceted. There's no single goal anymore. There are many. A house renovation, a restaurant business, a consultancy, YouTube, health, exercise, diet, family, my wife, relationships, responsibilities, a dozen competing priorities, all demanding time, energy, and attention. And that is where something started to break down for me. When I didn't hit the mark in one area, I'd beat myself up. I'd tell myself that I was slipping, that I was not who I used to be, that I used to be able to set my mind to something and just do it. But back then, life was simpler. I was not in a relationship. I worked for someone else. I could prioritize habits and actions that were perfectly aligned to a single goal. Now, several systems have to exist at the same time. Several plates need to stay spinning, and there's only so many hours in the day. I made changes to try and manage this. I gave up alcohol, I reduced screen time, I tried to maximize every minute. But even with all of that, it became obvious that it was impossible to get every area of my life to where I wanted it at the same time. That is where this video really begins. Because this is not about discipline anymore. This is about trade-offs. Life, especially a full and meaningful one, is built on trade-offs. When life becomes complex, you can't move everything forward at the same speed. You can't give 100% to everything at once. There is a finite amount of energy available, a finite amount of time. And when one area needs more, another has to temporarily receive less. The problem is not that this happens. The problem is when we pretend it shouldn't. It's December now. In hospitality, that means one thing: all hands on deck. Combine that with moving my restaurant to a new location halfway through November, and the reality is simple. The business needs attention, a lot of it. I'm working the floor several times a week. I'm dealing with the logistics of a new tenant in the old building. I'm working through the teething issues of the new space with new people. And the trade-off is that other areas of my life start moving more slowly. I'd love to be spending more time building my course, generating consultancy leads, expanding my YouTube presence, working on the house in preparation for hosting both families over Christmas. But each of those things gets a percentage, and there's only 100% to give. If the business takes 60, the remaining 40 has to be divided across everything else. You can optimize, you can be more efficient, but there's a ceiling. And if you try and push beyond it, you pay the price. Burnout, anxiety, overwhelm, the very things I talk about on this channel. And when those things show up, the instinct is to turn on yourself, to call yourself weak, to tell yourself that you should be able to handle this, that other people do, and that you're failing. It took me a long time to understand this properly, that prioritize exist in relation to each other, that choosing one thing always means choosing not to advance another at the same pace, and that knowing which priorities are non-negotiable is what allows the rest to function. For me, time with my wife is non-negotiable. Walking the dog is non-negotiable. If I choose those things, I have to give myself permission to be present with them without guilt, without mental negotiation. If I do that, I can enjoy those moments as conscious choices rather than stolen time. Can I give everything the attention I want this month? No, it's December. The business needs focus, and that focus now will support everything else later. That is where longer term thinking matters. January will be quieter, the percentages will shift, time and energy can be relocated, and over a 6-month window, everything can move forward together, not evenly, but intentionally. The mistake is trying to turn a dial past its limit. That is where people break, and that is where efficiency collapses. That's where joy disappears. Trade-offs are not failures, they're information. They teach us about consequence, about capacity, about who we are becoming. And if you resent what you're doing because you want to be doing something else, you poison that moment. You ruin the productivity of the task and you rob yourself of peace. When you recognize that priorities are choices, you can structure your life accordingly. You can compartmentalize. You can trust that doing what needs to be done now supports what matters later. That shift changes everything. It's not easy. Some things matter deeply and still don't get the time that they deserve. Sometimes that's unavoidable. But often when you come out the other side, you understand why it happened, or at least what it taught you. This year with the house taught me that more clearly than anything else. So much went wrong. Structural issues ate the entire budget. The work required to make this house livable had to be done by us to save money. We lived in a small holiday flat far longer than we planned. My wife and I, the lodger, a dog, 2 cats, all working full time. What we thought would be 3 weeks turned into 9. To make it work, I used to wake up at the crack of dawn, do a few hours of work on the business, and then head over to the house to do some work on my own. I'd then at 5 o'clock go back over to the flat, pick up my wife who just finished work, come back to the house, which we would work on till about midnight. I would then go home and get a couple of hours sleep. I'd then come back at 2 a.m. to pick her up, and then I'd take her home so that we could have a few hours sleep before we get up in the morning and do the whole thing all over again. We did that for maybe 5 or 6 weeks, and I've never been more exhausted in my entire life. During that time, I had to trust my managers with the business. I had to drop habits that mattered to me. The gym disappeared, routine collapsed, healthy living became inconsistent. At the time, I was tired, I was frustrated, sometimes resentful, completely unable to see the bigger picture. But now, sitting in the office that I built myself, working on something that matters deeply to me, I can see it much more clearly. That period of imbalance was necessary. Would I have preferred an easier route? Of course, but it wasn't available. Decisions had to be made. The younger version of me would have judged himself harshly, compared this season to simpler times, asked why discipline didn't look the same anymore. But the truth is, I've never carried this many priorities before, and I've never had to make these kind of trade-offs. Growth demanded a new way of thinking. Even now, I sometimes get frustrated when I can't give something the time that I want. I still steal from sleep, I still compress mornings, but I'm much more deliberate, and I'm quicker to protect my health. I do what I can within the percentages that I've chosen, and I trust that time will come for the rest. 6 months from now, the balance will look completely different. That perspective changes how you experience effort. Goals are powerful, but they demand a lifestyle, and you have to be honest about whether you're willing to live it. James Clear talks about this. Goals matter, but habits are what you live every day. If the habit required to reach a goal makes you miserable, that goal will always feel heavy. And this is where making peace with trade-offs becomes essential. Because the truth is, you can't have everything at once. You can have everything over time, but only if you stop punishing yourself for being human. Discipline still matters, but it must be paired with wisdom, self-compassion, and context. Trade-offs are not a weakness, they're maturity. And when you stop fighting that reality, life gets quieter, cleaner, and much more intentional. Which brings me back to the beginning. For years, I thought discipline was about forcing things through, about pushing harder, about never letting anything slip. But what I'm learning now is that discipline also means knowing when to ease off, when to hold steady, when to accept that this season is about something else. The peace comes from knowing why you're choosing what you are choosing. That is the work. If you like this video, feel free to give it a like and a subscribe. It helps me, it helps the channel, and it helps for people like us find the content that really matters. And as always, I'd like to remind you that you matter too. Don't forget that.